properly designed and put in place, a HACCP, or Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point system, helps ensure food product safety. It can also improve productivity and increase competitive advantage, enhance market access, and provide a competitive advantage. HACCP may help to decrease liability and reduce waste and production costs. But where do you start? Let me show you. HACCP should be implemented for all processing lines within a plant. But this may be difficult to do all at once. So to start with, select one of the lines. There are 12 steps in developing a HACCP plan and setting up a system. These steps include the 7 principles of HACCP. The first step is to establish your HACCP team. This team should involve people from across the organization with varied skills and from different departments within the plant. For example, senior management, production, quality control, sanitation, maintenance, shipping and receiving. You want people who have the best understanding of how changes will affect daily operations. It's important that management is involved, that they send a clear message about being committed and caring about the success of the program. And from the beginning, choose one person to be in charge of your HACCP program. Often, this person is called the HACCP coordinator.
Everybody's got a role in HACCP.
Ideally, your HACCP team should include maintenance staff, individuals with training in microbiology, food science, and someone with knowledge of regulations. You should include at least one individual who is thoroughly familiar with all aspects of the facility and its products. The second step of setting up a HACCP system is to obtain product and processing information. This information should include the ingredients used in the product and their sources, ingredient properties and their specifications, product formulation, procedures at each stage of processing, equipment used, time and temperature required, and all potential sources of contamination before, during, and after processing. The third step is to describe the finished product and identify its intended use. This and the product processing information will help you in hazard analysis. Now we've described the product and identified intended uses. Good work. The fourth HACCP step is to illustrate the process flow and plant layout. First, construct a process flow diagram, detailing the operations involved, right from receiving raw materials and on through to mixing, blending, cooking, cooling, packaging, and distribution of the finished product. Enough detail should be included to help you in your hazard identification. Next, create a plant schematic. This helps identify rooms and their function, also product flow and employee traffic. This is very useful in identifying and assessing potential hazards such as cross-contamination.
That's how we figure out where the problems could be.
Step 5 of setting up a HACCP system is to check the process flow diagram and plant schematic for accuracy and to make sure that no processing steps have been left out. This verifies any assumptions about product movement and employee activities. Now, the sixth step is also the first principle of HACCP. It is to identify and assess hazards with the incoming materials, such as ingredients, the processing line, and the processing environment. Your objective is to identify all potential hazards that are a threat to consumer safety. In identifying hazards, consider the biological, allergenic, chemical, and physical hazards of the ingredients. Also consider all process steps and whether hazards could be introduced at each step. There are 3 aspects to consider in hazard analysis. First, identify hazards associated with ingredients and incoming material. Each food ingredient should be checked for whether it could be a source of contamination, if it's something that sustains the growth of microorganisms, whether it's a microbial inhibitor, and whether there are any chemical or physical hazards. Next, identify hazards associated with each of the processing steps. Review your process flow diagram, plant schematic, and employee traffic patterns. After identifying ingredient and process hazards, it's time to identify hazards associated with operating practices. Observe your operations long enough to be confident they are the usual process or practice. Observe the hygienic practices of employees. Look for cross-contamination after processing. If you're uncertain whether hazards exist in the ingredients or can be introduced in the process or operating practices, measurement and laboratory testing could be needed. Be sure to follow this up by analyzing the collected data so you can assess risks and set limits. All the information collected so far will help you in identifying hazards. Once hazards have been identified, the risk of each one needs to be assessed. Risk is a combination of two things. One is the probability of a hazard being present in a food product. The second is the severity of the consequences of being exposed to that hazard. So if there is a high likelihood of a hazard being present and the severity of consequences are high, then the overall risk is considered to be high.